Hey, everybody. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And today I've got a great interview for you. This is a friend of mine. His name is Matt Gallant, and he's the chief executive officer of a great company. You may have heard of them. They're called Biooptimizers. They really specialize with powerful proteolytic digestive enzymes. They also have some support formulas for energy. I know you guys have a new trace mineral mix, B vitamin mix that's got fulvic acid. So some powerful products that I personally enjoy and I've recommended for a lot of my clients. And Matt's the CEO, and he's got a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. He's been a strength and conditioning coach for multiple pro athletes, a self-defense instructor, and has over 10 years experience formulating supplements and a lot of experience following a ketogenic diet himself and working with people with a ketogenic diet. So we're going to talk a lot more about that. So Matt, welcome to our show today, and I would love to know more about, I know you were telling me before our interview that you've been following ketogenic diet for a long time, way before that term got popular. So go ahead and share us your experience with it.
Yeah, so I was obsessed with bodybuilding from age 16 to 19. And during that time, I heard about the anabolic diet by Dr. Mauro Di Pasquale. Which prior to that, I had done Atkins, which had worked well for me. I did lose a lot of body fat. But when I heard about the anabolic diet, it sounded like a dream come true because he was doing a cyclical keto approach where you basically be keto for 5 to 6 days and then carb load for 1 to 2 days. And I did that for 3 years. I went from 147 to 235. Keep in mind, that was my goal, was to gain weight, gain muscle mass.
147 pounds to 235?
Yeah.
What period of time?
3 years.
Well, okay, yeah. That's a significant amount of muscle mass.
Yeah, I noticed there was some fat gain along the way, but mostly muscle mass. Anyway, so since that time, I love experimenting with things. So I've done everything from vegetarian to, you name it, I've probably done it. But I just go back to keto. And for the last 4 years, I've been nonstop. I have no intention of doing any other diet at this point. For me, this is it. And it's interesting because one of the things that we're into is looking at nutrigenomics, which is looking at your DNA, your genetics, and seeing what diet is the most appropriate for you. And not surprisingly, keto is probably the most appropriate diet for me genetically. Which, as a side note, if you're Caucasian, as a general rule, I'm going to generalize here, probably keto is the best approach. And if you think back to, 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, where winters could be very difficult, it makes sense that we adapted to be more ketogenic as far as what our bodies prefer. Versus here, I live in Panama, I've been here for 15 years, closer to the equator, there's an abundance of fruits and vegetables more or less all day long. And we can see that in the genetics that they have probably a better metabolism for eating carbs. And some people don't do as well on keto. So that's just a rough generalization. But if you understand epigenetics, we saw with that worm experiment, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, that it was passed on 18 generations. So, what your mom did and your dad did, it can be, again, 1,000 years ago. Yeah. That's literally affecting your genes today. So
it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Us Caucasians being in that Northern European, Northern Canada, that whole area, we're going to be relying more on fatty rich foods, not as much the produce and a lot of meat. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because we had to hunt and it was long winters and that's what we needed to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So how do you apply a ketogenic diet now? You said you do a cyclical ketogenic diet. So let's go through that. Like, what are you eating on a regular basis? What are some of your favorite go-to foods?
Yeah. Well, first, let's talk about some principles and strategies that are applicable really with any diet, but I've applied them to keto. One of them is the cycle diet. So I got to give credit where credit's due. Scott Abel really created this methodology. He's got a book you can buy called The Cycle Diet. His approach is low calories for 5 to 6 days and then a massive calorie spike for 1 day. And again, he doesn't do keto, and it applies for anyone. And the reason you'd want to do that is multiple. So one of them is that when you have if you're dieting for a very long period of time, and I've worked with a lot of clients that have lost a lot of weight, the worst thing that can happen is that your metabolism keeps dropping to the point where there's nowhere else to go, because your metabolism is adapted as a survival mechanism, and you can't drop any lower. I mean, at that point, if you're down for, let's say, a woman below 1,200 calories, where are you going to go? You can't go to 800 and 600, 500. And I've dealt with these women where they've come back and they've just destroyed their metabolism because they've been on such a calorie deficit for a long period of time. So one of the best ways to fight that is refeeds. So, refeed, again, I don't think of it as cheat days. I think of it as a refeed, which is an important, different reframe. Yeah. And there was an interesting experiment that came out last year where they took two groups. One group dieted nonstop for 12 weeks. The other group would go 2 weeks on and a 2-week break, right? And then the group that went 2 weeks on, 2-week break, they lost the same amount of body fat, okay? And again, when they were taking a break, they'd go to maintenance. They weren't at a surplus. But the big difference was at the end, their metabolism had barely dropped. So I think there's still a lot more research and science that will come out as far as what's the perfect refeed approach. But I know a lot of people, and again, Scott's coach, probably more champions than anyone I know in bodybuilding. And some of his clients have been on this strategy for 20 years. And what happens is that your leptin goes way up, your ghrelin drops down, because when you're dieting for a long period of time, your hunger gets out of control. And I've never met anybody that has beaten ghrelin. Like ghrelin's undefeated. Okay? and there's a short-term ghrelin response, but where it gets really nasty, and there's, again, interesting research that's come out very recently on this, where if you diet like really hard and drive your metabolism down, what happens is your body says, okay, I'm going to die, right? Like literally it's doing the math. Okay, I've got, let's say, 30 pounds of body fat left. And at the current pace that you're burning calories and feeding me, I'm going to run out of calories in X amount of time. So that's where it says, okay, let me drop my metabolism down. And also let's crank the ghrelin, which is your hunger, through the roof. Let's do all of these different things so that you start eating more. Yeah. And, I've experienced this when I got married like 8 years ago. I pushed, I was on a kind of fat loss cycle for a couple of years, going smooth, no problems. Then I decided to really push it for like the last 2 months before the wedding. And I was hungry for about a year and a half. And I'm not kidding.
Totally screwed up your hormones. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know another girl personally. She's been hungry for 2 years.
Wow.
So it's, you don't want to do that. You want to keep your body feeling safe, right? Yeah. That's the key thing, safe, which means slow, steady weight loss. But the refeeds make your body feel safe because, okay, you know what? I'm not starving. There's a surplus of calories. The other thing too, from a muscle building perspective, I like to eat carbs on my refeed. So the insulin, which is probably the most anabolic hormone in the body. I mean, people, of course, testosterone is anabolic. These different things are anabolic, growth hormone. But the insulin is extremely anabolic. So it's one of the ways that every year I keep gaining, 3 to 5 pounds of lean body mass a year. Sometimes even, I think last year was 7, is to refeed. And again, I'm at a calorie deficit. And I think it also just, genetically, going back to fasting and to feasting, because we do have feasting genetics as well. Going back to, let's go back 10,000 years ago, you just killed an animal. Like you're going to keep eating until you cannot possibly eat anymore because you don't know if you're going to have 2 weeks before you eat again, right?
And no refrigeration or anything like that. So you got to make the most out of it in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah. So I just feel great when I do it. Also, what happens is you start going dual fuel. Yeah. So on Mondays, I'll measure my ketones. I'm still at 0.5.
So your main feast day is Sunday, right? Yeah. So then Monday, you're testing your ketones. You're still in nutritional ketosis.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. So I never really get out and basically have dual fuel. So you're burning glucose and ketones like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And lifestyle wise, I mean, again, I'm a foodie. I like food. it's fun to go out on Sundays and go to restaurants and stuff like that. So that's one approach that, again, would really work for any diet. The other thing I do one meal a day from Monday to Saturday. Started with 16-8. I've done a lot of 5-day fasts and 3-day fasts. So the concept of intermittent fasting made sense.
Yeah.
And on keto, it's a perfect complement to keto, right? And that's why I think so many people are doing that. I love the energy, the saving time, all of that stuff. So I do that. And what I've been doing, like, let's say I want to start burning body fat. I like doing a 60-hour fast a week, which means I'll have my last meal on Thursday, and then I carb load on Sundays. Yep. And I think for fat burning purposes, that's about optimal. The research seems to indicate that if we go like 72 hours plus, we're starting to have some metabolic drops from that. So 60 hours, I don't feel a metabolic drop, but there's definitely some significant fat loss that happens during that time. So those are my general strategic approaches that, again, I think are applicable for a lot of different diets. As far as what I eat, fatty meats, right? So primarily ribeyes. And here's another great strategy that I started doing like 2 years ago. I eat the same thing the same day of each week. So literally I've eliminated all thinking about food.
Saves time and energy.
Monday it's ribeyes. Tuesday it's ground lamb with goat cheese. Wednesday I typically have I try to go to seafood, and then Thursday I have a huge salad, more of a ketogenic salad based on my gut biome. And that's another thing I recommend everybody does is go to viome.com and do a stool analysis on what bacteria you have. And then it also recommends which foods you should eat a lot of and which ones you should avoid. And for example, like chicken, for me, I've never liked chicken. I never felt good eating chicken. And of course, my gut biome said, don't eat chicken. But it did say, eat a lot of red meat. And it makes sense too that your gut biome is going to change based on what you're eating. So if you're eating a lot of red meat, the gut bacteria that eats red meat are going to proliferate, get stronger, multiply. So when you do the test, you'll see that. But even, the super salad that I eat on Thursdays, it's all foods that came out of my gut biome test. So arugula, watercress, wild salmon, blueberries, stuff like that. And my body just incinerates that salad because the gut biome, literally, they love that food. So they just break it down. It's really interesting to compare how much food I eat and how much comes out the next day. You can just tell that my gut biome is just completely incinerating that. So those are again, another principle is eat food based on your gut biome, based on your genetics. And that makes just such a big difference on digestion. Because if we're talking about health, we really need to optimize digestion. It's not just the food we eat. We need to break that food down into usable nutrients and then assimilate those nutrients into where they go, whether it's you're driving fatty acids into the mitochondria, or it's driving amino acids to the muscles, to our organs, to our brain, driving fatty acids to our brain, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what really matters, right? And if you can't break down the food because either one, it's not optimal for your digestion, or you don't have the hydrochloric acids or the enzymes required, which, at 30, 35, we start seeing a decline, as we do with most things in our body, with enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and that's where the digestive challenges start happening. And it's typically a gradual process. But at Bioptimizers, we're all about staying young and then dying, okay? Right? I'm not into the Let's Get Decrepit program. And kind of have that typical aging experience that most people have. And of course, we are going to get older, but there's a lot of things we can do to reverse that, slow that down, hack it. So that's what we do. And on the digestive side, it's a simple solution. So one is the appropriate enzymes for your diet. We have a product called Masszymes, which was designed to break down a lot of protein, but we just came out with Capex, which is designed for people on keto. So it has a lot of lipase, and lipase is the enzyme that breaks down lipids, fats into fatty acids. and it also has the protease. So it's perfect for people on keto. But what we've done with that too is we have L-carnitine to transport the fatty acids into the mitochondria. And then we have several key ingredients such as InnoSlim, 7-keto-DHEA, and other things to actually increase the mitochondria's utilization of fatty acids. So you take 4 or 5 Capex in the morning first thing, you're going to have energy for about 8 to 12 hours. I did the mistake twice of taking it like at 3 p.m. And both times my sleep, it took me about 3 hours to fall asleep the last time I did that according to my Oura Ring. And there's no nervous system stimulation. Yeah. This is all just burning up more fatty acids, primarily in the liver. So we also believe that in terms of preventing fatty liver, which can happen on keto, we can fight that or stop that or even potentially reverse that. So yeah, Capex is awesome. And then for really optimizing digestion, I do recommend hydrochloric acid, which is basically stomach acid. That makes a big difference. And then if you really want to take it to the next level, add our probiotics P3OM, which is proteolytic, which means it breaks down protein. So the combination of the P3OM, Capex for keto, and HCl, like there's never any bloating, that gas, that heaviness that most people think is normal after a meal. I think my parents growing up, it's like, oh, I'm full, I can barely move. That was a great meal. It was almost like the acid test that people would use. Yeah. So all of that's eliminated. And then if you are eating carbs, and let's say like a refeed day, and I do like eating, burgers and pizza and all that stuff, we do have a product called Gluten Guardian, which has been a game changer for eating a tremendous amount of food and again not having bloating and gas. Yeah. I can eat 7,000 calories in a Sunday and feel good. I mean, if I didn't use like Gluten Guardian HCl,
it'd be so beautiful.
I'd be hurting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
that's my approach.
And that's powerful. So I'm a huge fan of feast famine. And I think, especially when you're very metabolically fit, like individuals like us, leaner people, typically cycling out like once a week, like you're talking about, adding in that intermittent fasting can be powerful. For somebody that's really insulin resistant, you might cycle out a little bit less often, maybe once every 2 weeks, once every month. And that's something that like over time, you just kind of figure out the best strategy for you. But yeah, I'm a huge fan, just like you, of cycling in and out of ketosis. You're actually technically, especially when you're metabolically fit, you're technically still in ketosis. Yeah. You just didn't have a keto day, right? Your macros would not be ketogenic during that day. Yeah. So what I do is typically 4 or 5 days a week, I'm doing 2 meals. And then 2 or 3 days a week, I'm doing 1 meal. Right. And then one of those days where I'm doing 2 meals, I'm doing more carbs. Right. So just more carbs, a little more freedom on that day. And yeah, and the big thing with this is you're typically eating larger meals, right, than you would if you're eating 3-4 meals a day. And so therefore, there's a greater need for digestive enzyme support, like you were talking about, especially if you're on a high-fat diet. You need that lipase, protein support, so you need the HCl. And just like you said, one of the signs of poor stomach acid production is you start eating and you just feel like food is sitting in your stomach. You may also have acid reflux. Most people don't realize this, but acid reflux is actually too low stomach acid, actually it's not enough stomach acid is what we would say. The pH hasn't dropped low enough, rather than, too much stomach acid, which is what most people think, right? And so actually supplement, that's powerful.
The gas builds up and opens the valve, and then the acid comes up and you feel that burn.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big deal. That's for sure. I've seen HCl make a huge improvement in so many people's lives, especially as you age, right? And especially in our society where we're eating on the go. That's one thing I've found is taking almost like if I'm going to eat in the middle of the day, taking like a siesta, stopping, being really grateful for my meal. In our house, we pray before we eat, obviously triggers parasympathetic nervous system. We're more grateful. And then definitely taking digestive enzymes, and my wife uses HCl. Fortunately, I don't need it at this point, but she's great with 1 cap of HCl. And then we just, have a great meal, right? And we don't have the bloating and, all the digestive issues. We have great energy afterwards. Usually I'm not doing anything intense for like the first hour after. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but usually kind of allowing my body to rest and get the digestive juices it needs to flow properly. But
yeah, probably the best thing you can do after a meal, and there's significant research on this, is walking. So walking, just like
low
a
intensity
50-minute, low intensity walk does wonders for blood sugar. So, and I think it even stimulates motility, and it just seems to be the best thing. It's funny because my mom still does that. Like she goes walking after every dinner. So I think it was an intuitive knowingness that that's the right thing, and the science is validating that. So yeah, there's a lot of other benefits with enzymes. So from the athletic performance, like, again, we came from the bodybuilding world, and everybody was promoting protein and protein and protein. Of course, protein is important, but we just figured out, hey, it's not the protein that matters, is really how much can we break down.
Yeah.
And we feel that when you take like Massline, for an example, or Capex, it's almost like turning 1 gram of protein into 3 or 4 in terms of what's actually going inside your bloodstream. Because we actually use an ingredient called astrozyme, which will transport about 66%, depending on the amino acid, more aminos through the intestinal tract into your bloodstream. And what's the benefits of that? Well, and there's a lot of research on this. It will, for example, injuries, like athletic injuries, it will cut the recovery time in half. Whether it's black eyes, like almost any type of injury, massive amounts of proteolytic enzymes on an empty stomach, that's a key part, will cut injury rates in half. Also, in my opinion, recovery in general. So if you are exercising, you're weightlifting, running, whatever it is, taking proteolytic enzymes on an empty stomach will do wonders as far as your recovery, which allows you to train harder, gain muscle, whatever your goals are. The other thing too is the anti-aging benefits. There's a great book that came out recently called Longevity Code, and it's currently believed that what's killing supercentenarians, the people above 100, is actually protein agglomeration, which means the protein is accumulating in the cells over time and literally stopping the cells from functioning. So it's not cancer, it's not any of these things. It's literally just the cells just not being able to proliferate, and they become senescent and just stop functioning. So I believe that, again, this is where fasting and enzymes, and I've got to be careful here, but there's some people, there's some doctors that have protocols around cancer using proteolytic enzymes and fasting.
Yeah.
And the working theory is that using the enzymes will actually help break down the protein coating around the cancer, and then the body can do its thing. So I just think from an anti-aging perspective, from a health perspective, taking enzymes on an empty stomach is very, very powerful. And again, works wonders with fasting, because it just takes the autophagy to a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a big fan of using proteolytic enzymes to help with injuries, to help reduce inflammation, helps scavenge things like C-reactive protein and different interleukin 6 that's involved with systemic inflammation in the body. So your thoughts? I was always wondering about that. If systemic enzymes, what their impact is going to be on autophagy. And I don't think anyone truly knows, right? So right now we don't really have research on that, but we all kind of have our own theories. And so you believe that it really doesn't impact, it actually enhances the autophagy.
Oh, I think it's critical. Like anytime I'll do a 3-day, 5-day fast, I'll take 30, 40 caps a day of enzymes. And I've always noticed better results.
Yeah.
Better, like on all levels. It just seems to just accelerate it. Because again, what are the enzymes going to do? They're going to go in your bloodstream and start breaking down old undigested proteins, which create havoc, right? I mean, undigested proteins literally can kill people.
Yeah.
That is what an allergy is. It's basically a protein your body cannot break down, and your body just freaks out, essentially. So yeah, I mean, I think it does a lot of very good things, taking enzymes on an empty stomach.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so that product, Masszyme, this is really your best seller, kind of your most popular product at this point.
Yeah, but
Correct?
Capel's been flying off the shelves. We
Yeah.
just released
Yeah.
it.
Exactly.
And yeah, people are just raving about it again, especially for energy and bowel movements. Because what's one of the biggest issues on keto? I would say in general, it's bowel movements. Like probably the number one complaint. And Capex solves that. So I would say you're gonna have the smoothest bowel movements you've ever had. Yeah, the next day you're like, wow, it doesn't look like I ate keto when it comes out. So so taking a couple caps, and again, you can also use it for energy. So it kind of has that dual purpose. And it probably, because there's a lot of ingredients have been researched to do this, slightly enhanced fat loss. And again, I want to be careful here and not make crazy claims around fat loss. Ultimately, you got to be at a deficit, right? But the 7 keto DHEA and the InnoSlim, there's a lot of research that it can enhance the fat loss using a variety of different mechanisms.
And that Capex, is that best with meals or without meals? I know you were talking about taking it in the morning.
Yeah. So again, for energy, it's empty stomach.
Empty stomach.
But usually, like depending on your body weight, probably 1 cap per 50 pounds in the morning. So 150 pounds would be 3 caps. And then with the meals, probably 1 or 2 caps. And at dinner, maybe probably 1 cap, just because you got to be careful. If you want to be able to sleep. Yeah,
absolutely. It makes sense. Yep. And so again, a couple great products, Capex, we got Masszyme, he's got the P3OM probiotics, great HCl product as well. So definitely check that out. I'm a huge fan of optimizing our digestive health. I think that's so important. And just like Matt was saying, making sure we're getting good bowel movements. That is a huge issue on keto. A lot of people are having issues with bloating. They're just not digesting their fats well. Some people have issues with sludgy gallbladder, sludgy bile. I know the Capex can really help with that.
It does. Yeah, we've got dandelion root extract, which stimulates the bile.
That's right.
And bile is really what we need for the fats, right? Like bile is really what breaks down the fats. Yeah. That's a key part of it.
Yeah, it's huge. So when people eat food, the first thing happens, obviously you break it down in your mouth, but then it goes into the stomach. You need the acid to help your body basically mobilize some protein digesting enzymes like pepsin. You need to sterilize your food so bacteria doesn't overgrow in your system. Right. Most people aren't producing enough stomach acid, especially as you age, or especially if you're somebody that eats on the go or is under a lot of stress. So you definitely want to look at supporting your HCl if that's the case, and then also your protein digesting enzymes, like he was talking about, Masszymes. If you're on a ketogenic diet, really key product to look at is the Capex, right, with that extra lipase, because you're eating a higher fat diet. And you also want that good bile flow like he was talking about. So I'm going to leave a link below this video, but the website to look at is Kenergize. Yeah, kenergize.com/keto edge. And there's a discount coupon, Keto Edge 20. So you can check out the products there, the key products for, they're going to support you on your ketogenic journey and help you digest your food better, help optimize your energy levels, and you'll feel a world of difference. And, I think a ketogenic diet and lifestyle can be, a life changer for so many individuals. I've seen so many people do absolutely amazing on it. But I'll tell you, there's about a third of the population from what I've seen that really do struggle with a lot of these issues when they start increasing the fat. And, I would say everybody would benefit, but certainly if you're noticing digestive issues, if your energy is just not a 9 or 10 out of 10 on a daily basis, these products would really take you to the next level. So definitely check those out at the link below. And Matt, any last thoughts?
No, it's really about, again, optimizing the diet and making a choice of, hey, where do I want to go with my health and my body? Am I going to let myself grow old normally, which means that, your body starts falling apart, you lose muscle mass, your IQ, the brain speed drops. And then, the last 5-10 years are a horrible, decrepit life. Or do you want to live an optimized, and a biologically optimized life where we're fixing things, hacking things, we're using exercise, we're using nutrition, we're using supplements, we're using biohacking technologies. Pretty soon is going to be genetic editing. That's, name it, stem cells, and making the choice to keep improving our health as much as we can which translates to quality of life. It translates to a better brain. It translates to more happiness, more neurotransmitters. So that's really the choice that I would recommend everybody consciously makes.
Yeah.
And probably most of your listeners already have, and that's why they're listening to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we don't have to settle for mediocrity or poor health. On a 95% of the time, you should be a 9 or a 10, your energy, your digestive function, your brain health. I mean, you can perform at a really high level. And if you're not, you want to find out the root cause. You want to start supporting it. And so just like you were talking about, get the right foods in, follow, strategic path, like for example, a cyclical ketogenic diet, like you were talking about, optimize your digestive health, your mitochondrial function. And as you do that, you're going to see improvements, gradual improvements there. So definitely check out the products that Matt offered. He's invested a lot of energy and a lot of years of experience into this. He's a master formulator, and I know you'll see great results with that. So check that out. Again, the code is KetoEdge20. The website is kenergize.com. So KENERGIZE.com/KetoEdge. Matt, thanks so much for joining us, and everybody be blessed. Bye-bye.